After ending its 16-year permanent bomber presence in Guam, the U.S. Air Force this week flew a B-1B Lancer to the Pacific as part of its new unpredictable deployment experiment to test cruise agility when sending heavy aircraft forces around the world. The B-1, from the 28th Bomb Wing at Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, flew a 30-hour round-trip flight to Japan. There, it operated alongside 6 U.S. Air Force F-16 Fighting Falcons, 7 Japan Air Self-Defense Force F-2s and 8 JASDF F-15s over drawing range near Misawa, Pacific Air Forces said in a release. This operation showcases our unwavering commitment to the security and stability of the Indo-Pacific region through the employment of strategic forces from around the globe, said General Charles C.Q. Brown, Jr., head of Pacific Air Forces and U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. From confronting invisible threats of a global pandemic to addressing military aggression and coercive activities, we remain a lethal, innovative and interoperable force focused on a shared vision of upholding a free and open Indo-Pacific, he said in the release. Like the advancements of our agile combat employment concept of operations, we continue to innovate and adapt our approach, to include how we deploy and employ the various weapon systems we integrate with our allies and partners, Brown said. Bringing the B-1 into theater ensures our bilateral interoperability accounts for any combination of flying operations to prepare for and outpace the rapidly growing threats in the Indo-Pacific region. The show of force flights come as Pentagon officials in recent weeks have stressed continued operations to deter rivals, despite the novel coronavirus pandemic. Adversaries who think now is the time to challenge the USA, you're dangerously wrong, Defense Secretary Mark Esper said in a tweet last week. On Friday, Esper renewed the message. Our adversaries are not standing down, he said. We will continue to make sure that the Defense Department is ready to protect the USA. Last week, Air Force Global Strike Command announced that it is transitioning to a new model, ending the Continuous Bomber Presence (CBP) mission in favor of forward deploying bombers to the Indo-Pacific. For the last year, AFGSC officials have planned more and shorter strategic bomber rotations. The concept, known as dynamic force employment, mimics how the service often sends its bomber forces to Europe for weeks-long summer exercises. The B-1 callsign Hyper 21 was spotted Tuesday flying over the Bering Sea near Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, crossing over into the northern Pacific. The news was first reported by The Drive, citing movements reported by Tracker. The Lancer's return to the Pacific, albeit short, marks the first for the long-range bomber since 2018. Between 2016 and 2018, the B-1 held a CBP deterrence mission, housed at Andersen Air Force Base, Guam. The rapid employment of air power directly supports the national defense strategy and assures we can provide overwhelming force anywhere, anytime in support of American interests or our allies and partners, said General Tim Ray, AFGSC commander. This mission is a demonstration to our friends throughout the region. We will continue to remain fully predictable in our commitment to ensuring peace, while also demonstrating that we have the ability to operate from numerous locations across the globe. Even during the global pandemic, the latest flight was the second bilateral training to occur with the bomber this year, officials said. In February, 2 B-52 Stratofortress bombers flew alongside 6 Air Force F-16s and more than 45 JASDF fighter aircraft near Japan, according to the release. From a military standpoint, US analysts say the move makes a lot of sense. The consistency and predictability of the Guam deployment raised serious operational vulnerabilities. A planner in China's military could have easily plotted ways of destroying the bombers due to their well-known presence, said Timothy Heath, senior international defense researcher with the RAND Corporation think tank in Washington. In fact, one of China's highly touted intermediate-range ballistic missiles, the DF-26, was dubbed the Guam Killer by analysts when it was debuted in 2015 for its ability to hit bases on the U.S. territory from the Chinese mainland. In 2017, North Korea tested an intermediate-range ballistic missile of its own, the Hwasong-12, in what state media said was part of a plan aimed at containing Guam. Pulling back from Guam reduces the targetable footprint facing Chinese and North Korean ballistic missile threat, said Carl Schuster, a former director of operations at the U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center. And the bomber pullback should be reassuring to allies like Japan and South Korea, the analyst said. Tokyo and Seoul, among other Asian allies and partners, are likely to be encouraged by evidence that the U.S. is taking seriously its defense obligations and improving the deterrence and readiness of key combat forces through actions such as ending the CBP. Heath said key assets, in the form of the bombers, will be moved out of range of a possible first strike by adversaries. But armed with long-range strike missiles and supported by aerial refueling tankers, they can be back in action in the Pacific in less than a day from their mainland bases in places like North Dakota and Louisiana, Schuster said. To illustrate that point, on Wednesday the Air Force sent a B-1 bomber from its South Dakota base on a 30-hour round trip to Japan, where it teamed up with Japanese F-15 and F-2 fighters as well as F-16 jets on a training exercise. This operation showcases our unwavering commitment to the security and stability of the Indo-Pacific region through the employment of strategic forces from around the globe, General C.Q. Brown, Jr., US Pacific Air Force's commander, said in a statement. A U.S. Air Force B-1 from Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, and F-16 fighters from Misawa Air Base, Japan, conduct a bilateral joint training with Japan Air Self-Defense Force F-2S off the coast of northern Japan on April 22, 2020. We remain a lethal, innovative and interoperable force focused on a shared vision of upholding a free and open Indo-Pacific, the general said. Schuster said that while the bombers are on the way from the U.S. mainland, the U.S. military maintains enough firepower in the region including F-35, F-16 and F-15 fighters in Japan and warships and submarines armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles to deal with the opening stages of any conflict. And US allies and partners also have their own highly capable forces, Schuster said. The move also signals confidence in their defense capabilities, he said, but then there are the optics. Perception matters, and there is worry that removing the bomber presence from Guam won't be seen the way Washington wants it to be. It comes at a time when the Trump administration is asking allies to cover more of the cost of US forces based in their countries after his 2018 Singapore summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The U.S. president openly questioned the cost of the bombers on Guam when used for exercises in South Korea. The war games are very expensive. We paid for a big majority of them. We fly in bombers from Guam, Trump said. That's a long time for these big massive planes to be flying to South Korea to practice and then drop bombs all over the place and then go back to Guam. I know a lot about airplanes. It's very expensive. He added comments like those have raised eyebrows about Trump's commitment to the Pacific, and for some the movement of the bombers off Guam exacerbates that feeling. The end of CBP sends a clear strategic message to us Pacific allies. Bit by bit the U.S. is leaving, said Peter Layton, a former Australian Air Force officer and analyst at the Griffith Asia Institute. It is not reassuring. Instead, it is more a reminder that the times are changing, he said. Layton noted that the departure of the bombers from Guam came around the time that China was flexing its military muscles with exercises near Taiwan and in the South China Sea. The very public withdrawal of the CBP seems to be deliberately timed to reinforce the regional perceptions of a rising China and a withdrawing America, Layton said. Since its inception in 2004, the continuous bomber presence on Guam has been about very visible force projection. As recently as February, the Air Force was touting the presence of a Guam-deployed B-52 participating with dozens of Japanese and other US planes in training consistent with long-standing and well-known as freedom of navigation policies. Bombers from Guam have been used in such operations over the South China Sea as well as in flights over the Korean Peninsula as a demonstration of US resolve during the height of tensions with North Korea. The flights over and around South Korea often drew fiery responses from Pyongyang. The gangster-like US imperialists are ceaselessly resorting to their frantic nuclear threat and blackmail to stifle the DPRK with nukes at any cost. A post from the state-run Korean Central News Agency said after B-1 bombers from Guam overflew the South in 2017.